What's going on, everyone? This is going to be my first YouTube tutorial. I'm going to be showing you guys how to do a mid-low bald fade. Essentially just a bald fade, and they all depend just where you guys want to start it off. So my first step, I'm going to grab my clipper with no guard, and I want to close the lever all the way. I usually start around the edge, and because he wants his like mid-low, I bring it right underneath the occipital bone. Try to give yourself like a nice solid line. You don't want to spend too much time on it either. Then after that, I open my guard up all the way, still with no guard. I want to do about ½ an inch to an inch on top of that. Try to keep your lines as parallel as you can so you can have a smooth transition. And then I'm going to grab the number 1 guard closed, again about ½ an inch on top of that. Remember, you want to keep them parallel with each other, and you don't want to make these lines too close to each other, because then you're not going to be able to fade those lines out whenever we do go back and fade those out. Now you're going to do the number 1 open. You're going to essentially do the same step, follow it through, keep it nice and parallel, and you're going to start seeing the transition of everything, how everything's transitioning into play. I'm going to grab my 1½ guard, close, and I'm going to do the same thing, open the guard up. Remember, there's plenty different ways to fade. This is just one of my easiest ways that I could demonstrate to you guys. So now I'm going to do the 1½ open and continue to do the same thing. I like to use a brush whenever I'm dealing with shorter hair, but once I start getting into longer hair up top, I like to switch over to a comb. So now I'm doing the number 2 close. And then I'm going to go back and do the 2 open as well. And usually I like to end off around a 2 or a 3. Now just for video purposes, I believe I went all the way up to a 4. But basically you're going to grab every guard, 1 closed, 1 open, 1½ closed, 1½ open, 2 closed, 2 open. And you're going to go all the way to the top. Because his hair is a little longer up top, I'm gonna go ahead and there's a couple different things you can do. You could do clipper over comb, you could use your thinning shears or your shears to fade that out, and I demonstrated a little bit of all of them. That way you guys can see what type of transition you're gonna go into. So obviously if your client is dealing with shorter hair, you can just keep fading in with whatever number guard he has up top. Now this is where we start blending out that bottom line. What I'll do first is my transition from my open guard to my number 1. I grab my half guard, and what I do is I close it and I slowly start opening it little by little. Again, I'm not trying to create another harsh line. This is where the blending starts coming in, so it's a lot of flicking out. You're not just grabbing your guard and taking it all the way up to another line. You're slowly blending that out little by little. And what I like to tell people, especially around these areas, is try to use the corner of your blade anytime clients have like a dent in their head or anything that's not completely smooth. You can use the corner of your blade and kind of lighten that spot out. So that's the first thing that I do. I do my half, then I go back to the number 1 and I essentially do the same thing. Grab the guard all the way closed and slowly flick it out, slowly. And this is where I tell people, if you have a mirror behind you, you can kind of turn around and look in your mirror and you'll see the dark spots, and just try to lighten them up. Not so much creating another line, just lightening it up. Again, try to use the corner of your blades anytime you see any spots that are a little more difficult to do. And I usually only have to do this with my half guard, and then every now and then my number 1. Every now and then you can do it with the 1½ and the 2 just to touch anything up, just for touch-up work. But this will basically clear out all that space before we actually start fading out that bottom line. Here I ended up doing the number 2 just to lighten everything up because of the video and everything here. Alright, this is where you actually start fading it. So once you get to that bottom line with the same steps that you did with the half and the 1½, you're going to slowly take your clipper from closed to open. And because you already faded everything out, this should pretty much blend right into place. So as you can see, I'm slowly using my wrist, flicking everything out, not creating another guideline to where I gotta go back again, and I'm slowly fading everything out. And notice how whenever I get to certain dark spots, I'll use the corner of my clipper. This will definitely help out. Little by little, just flicking actions here. And even whenever you are done, you can always look in the mirror and go back and touch up work. That's what's gonna ultimately give you the best fade, going back, touching everything up, making sure everything is nice and perfect. As you can see, that's what I was doing here. I noticed little imperfections, little flaws. I go back and touch them up. And mirrors will help you out. I mean, whenever I first started cutting hair, I used to record myself. I used to take lots of pictures. And then after my clients left and I'd go home, I'd look at my pictures and I'd see little imperfections. And then I'd say, oh, okay, you know, that's something I gotta watch out. That's something next time this client comes in or next time I get the same type of haircut, I'll be able to work on. So after I fade that out, then I grab my edgers. Now these are zero gapped, and I like to use a GTX blade. What I do is I go back underneath and I clean up all the hairs underneath it, and this will make it a lot easier than going in and just making your guideline with the edger. I do that as well, just for this video purpose. I wanted to do this so I could show you guys how not to leave a harsh line, and that way it won't be as hard to erase. Again, this is just touch up work that I do after that. Now after I did use the edger, I flicked everything out, took it as close as I could to my closed guard without creating an outline. Now I use my bronze shaver. You could use your Andes wall. I own all of them. Do the same thing. You want to take it as high as you can without creating another line there. So you can see I probably created a line there, and that's why I ended up coming back to flick it out. That other side I was working on, that's why it looks like that now. This is what I was talking about with the clipper over comb. Now you don't want to dig too deep. Always kind of pull that comb back towards yourself so you don't dig too deep. Otherwise, when you look at that fade from the front, you'll be able to see botches, that little bits and pieces where you went in too far. Or here I show another way that you could do, which is using your thinning shears, which will definitely lighten it up a bit. Or ultimately you could just go back to your shears, but all of them are great ways to help you transition from a skin fade into anything longer up top. Now here I am going to start trimming the top. There's plenty different ways you could cut with scissors. Honestly, it all depends too if you're cutting the hair on the sides or up top. If you're going with the comb over, obviously one side's going to be shorter than the other. But what I like to do is I like to set my guideline with my finger depending on what length I want. I take it from the front to the back, straight down the middle, and then I work my left side or my right side, and then I work my left side, and then I will cross check it. I'll go back, measure everything with my fingers, make sure it's nice and complete. But eventually I'll drop another video on that, explain it into details, because what happens whenever you do cut people's hair with scissors, if you're not cross checking or if you're not 100% on making sure it's even, once your client's hair dries, it will look like it has a bunch of lines. Now certain styles are meant for that. For example, like if somebody wants texture, which my nephew did in this case, but not all the time do you really want it to look like that, especially when people, you know, you'll get your picky clients that want it to be 100% even. So that's what I'm doing now. I kind of go back and forth. I cross check everything, make sure everything's nice and even. And honestly, I probably don't have to as much, but I'll cross check it a million times just to make sure it's even. Alright, one thing that I like to do before I style anybody's hair is I like to blow dry it in place. So in this case, he likes his hair kind of textured, like a messy look. So what I do is I just kind of blow dry everything down for now. That way I can get a nice clean edge on him. What I'm doing now is I'm taking my texture shears, or my thinning shears, whatever you guys like to call them, and I'm just adding texture through it. I like to kind of go from side to side. That way whenever he styles it, it'll give him that nice messy look. There's a couple different ways you can style this hair too. You could use, you know, like a matte clay, or you could use a volumizer powder too, which I like to use, which will give it a real dry look. Now whenever I edge up the front, you don't always have to do this, but I like to grab my number 1.5 guard open and kind of just scrape through it a little bit. And what that'll do it'll clean up the front, so whenever I edge up the front, it'll make it a lot more defined. Again, only reason I'm doing this is because he does wear his hair down. Now if his hair was coming up, what I would do is I would only trim the baby hairs with the 1.5. That way it wouldn't look like he had a patch missing in the front of his head. Whenever I edge, I like to start from the middle of the hair, work my ways to the side. And this is my nephew here, and he likes his side edges very natural, no pushback at all. That's why I try to keep the sides as natural as possible, which is why they might not be as sharp as I could get them, but again, it's always what the client wants. Try to use your mirror as much to try to make sure it's 100% perfect. Again, even whenever I'm done, I'll probably still go over and touch this up a couple of times. You could use, a lot of people use shaving gel. Again, shaving gel, sometimes I just like to spray a little bit of water. Pretty much will give you the same effect. Sometimes on dry shave too, it just depends on the hair. If it's a little thicker, I don't want to irritate the clients. Make sure you blade everything up nice and smooth. I like to always make sure, especially on skin fades, go around the ear and around the neck. Make sure you didn't miss any hairs there. That's the last thing you want. A fresh haircut and then to miss a couple hairs behind the ear. This is the stuff that I told you guys I like to use to give it that dry, natural look, but it's volumizer powder. It'll kind of help the hair lift up a bit, yet still giving it a dry look. Just kind of running my fingers through it, giving him like a nice, messy look here. And this is my final product here. Nice and blended towards the back. Everything nice and smooth now. Nice transition. And again, I always go back for touch-up work. This is gonna be my first video, but if you guys think I should keep dropping some of these, maybe leave a comments on what you guys want to see, what you guys want me to teach you guys, what I could do better, because obviously it's my first time. It's not gonna be perfect, but hopefully with time I'll learn different techniques and different ways to show you guys. Thank you guys for watching, and hope to see you guys back here soon.